Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of The Power. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with Roxy's story because we can use that to also jump into Allie's story, but we'll get to that soon enough. First and foremost, starting off with Roxy, she finally tracks down the Derek she had heard about, and she confronts him, wondering whether or not he is the guy responsible for her mom's death. And we finally find out, because I just couldn't understand, what would her having a new beau, Roxy's mom having a new guy in her life, why would that warrant, Bernie to murder her? Well, it turns out, Derek is actually a cop. He was investigating, Bernie, and it's interesting because I don't think she was helping take him down, but I think it's just the fact of the matter is he got close to her while investigating, which obviously is a conflict of interest in any situation that would completely and utterly destroy any case. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think he was saying she was actively helping him, but it's just the person she ended up falling, because obviously he probably kept close enough ties, so it might be a thing of, hey, they kept bumping into each other, and one thing led to another, and they fell in love. But the moment Bernie murdered Roxy's mom, he backed away. Because he didn't want to, the reason why it's your mom never wanted to introduce me to you, Roxy, is because she didn't want to cause trouble for you, because she was afraid if she told you, what would you immediately do? Tell your dad. Which Roxy couldn't give much pushback on it, because at the end of the day, we know all she's ever done is seek her father's approval. That's all we've ever seen throughout this entire show has been her doing that. So it's you find out your mom's dating someone that could try and come after your father, because your father's your father at the end of the day. And, because she strived to do, she only wants to be a part of the business because she wants to be a part of her father's life. She's been so disconnected. It's that thing of, she was on good terms with her mom, but she really cherished her dad. It's that thing of once that void's in your life, you try to compensate. So that's why she always wanted to be a part of his world, because she felt that was the only way she'd ever get her father's full intention and love, because she thought hey, if I'm a part of this, you might start seeing me the same way you see your other children, but refused to see me. And that's why she kind of enjoyed being kind of the muscle and being finally seen by her father. Because it's yeah, they had a nice enough relationship, but it was never hey, you're my go-to. You were always just kind of she always felt like the kid on the outside. She always, even though, she's the bastard child, and from her perspective, it's I'm the bastard kid that you just kind of leave on the side. It's just it's not fair. But either way, Derek, afraid that Bernie would ever come after him, ended up dropping we don't know. He said he got rid of the evidence. I don't know if he full-blown destroyed it or whether he kept it. I would have kept it. Hopefully he did, because that's a good insurance policy. But it also puts a target on your back, so he most likely destroyed it. I think he said he destroyed it, but maybe he just said got rid of. But I think I remember him saying destroyed it. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. But yeah, he never stepped up when it came to Roxy's mom, because he's because despite me loving her, I'm a bit coward, and so I've just been waiting for Bernie to knock up on my door and kill me. I guess the only reason, he felt like he never had a reason to, because Derek bowed out of the way, so he never felt like I had to, because as long as he was in fear, he was never going to do anything. But now Roxy is, got a mission, and she confronts her dad about it. It's why'd you do it? And I think it speaks volumes, the sad situation of what were the first things out of her mouth? It's why did you not want her to be happy because you thought she was leaving you behind? Did you think I would forget about you? That's Roxy's perspective, that she didn't want to believe it's simply because she was, it's no, it has to be more. You is it you're so controlling, and even though you're not together, you want her to miss you or something? That's the sad thing. That's Roxy's perspective. But it's no, it's pure and simple. She was dating a cop, and he thought that was something stupid of her to do. And it's once again, who knows what she actually said to him? Maybe she did, she probably was never going to rat on Bernie. Because I think she knew that he was a cop, but I don't remember I think she knew that he was investigating Bernie. She just never said anything. because I guess it's kind of neither here nor there, but also she didn't want to, like, once again, she didn't want to put Roxy in a position, because I think she sadly thought in a position like that, Roxy might choose her father over her, sadly. And, you know, all Roxy's done up to this, after losing her mom, is try to get revenge for her. So it's kind of sad to see how things kind of flipped. And obviously this person she aimed for and looked after and cared about, wanted to prove herself to this entire time. It's like, you're the one that destroyed my life. And it's like, you know what, screw you. I'm happy your son is dead, because now you know what it feels. You're going to have to live the rest of your life with that fear. And it's like, I could kill you right now. And it's like, oh, he's like, you're going to? Go right ahead. Take your shot. But she wasn't going to, because regardless of it all, regardless of what he did, that's still her dad. It might be the thing of, yeah, I'll suffer the ramifications, because if I kill Bernie, everyone's going to come after me for it. But it also is, regardless of it all, you're still my dad, so I don't think I could pull the trigger on you, metaphorically speaking, when we're talking about her powers. But her last middle finger to her dad was that she gave Barbara the power, which is like, hey, if you're going to stick with him, you're going to need this power. Understandably, because now it's also in Barbara's mind that, like, right, you killed Roxy. Like, I might not be Roxy's biggest fan, but for you to have killed her mom is super jacked up. It's like, what, if I cross you, will you kill me too? This is the mother of one of your children, and you still set it up to have her murdered, you know? Because once again, it speaks volume for him that is all about blood. Because it's like, regardless of it all, Roxy is actual blood. That's just your mom, and she's not family in that regard. But you, Roxy, even though I've never given you, like, part of me wonders, is that also why he took such a bigger interest in her going forward too, was because he saw how heartbroken she was, but it was also him overcompensating for, hey, I'm the one that killed your mom, so I want to make you feel better and, you know, step up and be there for you more. That's also one way to read it. But yeah, Barbara's got the power now, and it's like, yeah, understandably, she's going to be on edge around him too. But also, like, we know what that power does for people. It kind of makes you feel powerful in a way you haven't been before. I could easily see, I don't know if Barbara would actually go through with it, but I could definitely see her, like, I don't know if she'd kill Bernie and try and take over the whole monk, you know, enterprise and just gang and mob and stuff. I don't know. We see, like, Daryl was there during those conversations, and obviously Ricky already knew enough to be like, hey, Dad got you out of the house. He's definitely responsible. I don't think he wasn't in the no, but he's smart enough to know, like, yeah, doing something like that, putting the pieces together. He must have known for, like, the whole Derek conversation to really spark that. He had to have known some details, but not everything. Who knows what Ricky knows? Definitely got Roxy out of the way, because she's dead to the family, because Bernie's sending people after her, especially when she's trying to go to New York, but she ends up kind of being like, nah, I'm gonna go somewhere else, because she's watching Allie's videos. So that in itself connects to Allie, who... when we catch up in her section of things, which I love, the Billie Eilish song "You Should See Me in a Crown" is playing. It's so interesting, because I feel like that song gets used so much. I wonder if that, like, considered, like, her biggest song or not. Like, obviously it's like one of the first songs of hers that really popped, but I'm trying to think, like, I'm wondering whether that or Bad Guy is the bigger song. I feel like Bad Guy might be the bigger song, because by the time Bad Guy came out, she was even bigger fame-wise, and I could see that, like, that song was, like, everywhere. But You Should See Me in a Crown, like, plays a lot in TV shows. That's where I hear it the most nowadays. So I just think that's so interesting. And obviously, considering the story and everything, it's very befitting. But Allie's, like, wrecked with guilt about the Veronica thing. And obviously there's police outside and an ambulance, and it's like, hey, you don't need to feel bad, because at the end of the day, she was an enemy, and you're going to have to kill other people along the way. Because what makes the Veronica thing complicated is because, and the reason why Allie feels guilt over it, it's like, yeah, killing Clyde is one thing. He was an abusive monster that was abusing her, so it's like, yeah, it was self-defense, because he was literally in the process about to abuse her, so it's like, yes, she had every right. It was self-defense. And also, even outside of that moment, he'd already been doing it beforehand. She had every right to kill him. It's like, it's the whole taking justice into your hand. Let's talk about the show. We don't have to necessarily take it to, like, a real world conversation, but in the confines of this story, not saying just straight up murdering people is the way you go, taking justice in your own hand. In this circumstance, it's talking about this story without bringing it into real world parallels. I still think, like, she did what she needed to do. But there's such a Veronica thing. It's like, hey, I was just trying to, like, control your mind. I didn't know there would be ramifications. Because the way they made it sound, like I wasn't sure if Sister Veronica died. No, she straight up died. So now Ali feels like, yes, she was kind of an adversary, but she wasn't a bad person. She was just very stuck in her ways about this is in her mind, like just like Al. You could almost say like she's kind of the antithesis of Ali, because Ali, she's gathering people not because it's like, hey, you're all like, it feels more like she uses people, whereas Veronica did seem like she legitimately was trying to protect people. She wanted to get rid of Ali because she felt like Ali was corrupting the other girls and like taking away this safe space from them and turning it into something else. I mean, she's arming them up to be her soldiers. So it's that complicated thing of Ali's looking for a family and she's built one, and Veronica was going to take that away from her. But it is also at the same time these people are being manipulated by not only Ali but also this voice, because once again we don't know this voice's circumstances, especially because Savannah brings it up later on. Like, yo, this girl hears voices. She's not hearing God. She's just kind of making it seem like maybe Ali's mentally ill is what she's kind of making it seem like. So that's the thing of like, I don't know what this voice thing is going to turn into. Is it going to be a situation of, like I said, is it going to be tied to a physical person or not? Like, could she have the power? Could she be the origins of it? Like, why this power? Like, did she set off the chain of events? Like, did it start with one person and she spread it around, or what? Like, how? Like, maybe she's someone that ran. Like, Ali might have met her before, but might not remember. I mean, maybe the voice she's also hearing, and maybe that's the like psychological element of it's her. Let's see. Her subconscious manifesting itself as a voice that I'm like, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, the voice is most likely her mom's, because she doesn't remember her mom because she was like a kid, if not a baby, when she was dropped off and left by her mom. So I'm assuming like on some level her brain remembers her mom's voice, and now that's why I'm like, it might be a voice, because I'm like, if it was someone that she met, like you would think Ali would remember it, unless it was a voice she heard at a young age that now her subconscious, you know, like in her subconscious, in her need to protect herself, this subconscious manifested itself in this form. It was her way to kind of deal with everything that was happening to herself, kind of giving herself a voice when she felt voiceless, especially at a time she literally was voiceless. She wasn't talking. So that's my current theory. I'm thinking the voice might be her mom's voice, but it's not really her mom. It's just her own, like, she created an alter ego that says and does everything she needs to do to make herself confident, to be the representation of her voice that was taken for so long. So, but there's still always a possibility it's actually a person, but I'm like, how would they go about doing that? So it could just be someone that's powerful, that has the power that's that powerful, might even be patient zero with it, but I'm leaning more now towards thinking, like I said, it's her subconscious, it's her mom's voice, so. Obviously, no one knows for sure that Ali did something to Sister Veronica. Everyone turned to her last episode probably thinking like, oh, maybe you can do something to her. Like one of her friends, she healed her seizures. Maybe they were hoping she could do the same. But no, Sister Veronica's dead. But with that, Ali's kind of raised up her army and obviously regurgitating the same stuff that the voice is telling her. Once again, you're raising up an army, people that will fight for you, people that will die for you, do anything for you. And so I think it's so interesting. Obviously, some of the nuns that are still there, they ended up giving them the power, like Maria. So I thought that was interesting. Which I thought was so fascinating, because I'm like, they get into like the, and I won't get into it, but I'm curious about how that works in Maria's circumstances, but maybe her circumstances are a little bit different just because of everything she's going through. Maybe that ends up on a biological sense, like maybe she does have a skein, because I was wondering like, oh, does she has a skein and now like it does work like that, or is it a situation of it's just a surge through the body, like, you know, I mean, because like Ryan's circumstances are complicated, so I'm sure Maria's are in that same circumstance, being transgender. That's why I was kind of like curious, because I didn't think she had a skein, but I'm wondering like because she is a woman, so it is a thing probably that maybe over time a skein automatically developed. Maybe just like enough estrogen in her body was produced that it led to a skein, just like Ryan's it's probably exactly like Ryan's circumstances in that regard of like, you might not have been born a woman, but you are a woman now, and you know you have estrogen in your body, so it led to a skein developing. So, because it's a conversation like, other than Maria, we haven't really had anyone, at least that we're aware of, in the trans gender community represented in that regard, in the regard of we haven't really seen that outside of like Maria, you know. So that's why I was so curious, like from a biological standpoint, how those circumstances work, you know. But anyway, putting all that aside, going back to the Savannah thing, that's continued to be an interesting development when like Savannah was like she's the only one that had, whether it's a good thing or bad thing. I mean, it's kind of bad for Savannah, but she's the only one that hasn't gotten swept up in Allie's words, which is so interesting because she actually was a pretty devout person about it until she found out, hey, Allie isn't who she claimed to be. Oh, well, Eve isn't who she claimed to be, and she's also murdered someone. But it's also like, right, we've all done stuff that, because I think because once again, maybe it speaks volumes about Allie, because everyone has their moral code of like, right, regardless of your reasonings for it, you still murdered someone. And she's like, because of that, I think you also did something to Sister Veronica. Why won't you guys listen? Are you brainwashed? And Allie made it perfectly clear, you're going to basically regret this. Like, God remembers those who weren't by your side. You know, your doubt will be remembered. Because Savannah's the only one there. Everyone else is Team Allie. So it outs her even more. But also considering all that Allie did to help her, especially with her daughter's situation, for Savannah to turn against her. You would think out of anyone, Savannah would be the most loyal. Because it's like, hey, we're going to do what we can to get your daughter back. But it's like, now she's seen as an enemy, which we've heard what the voice is like, yo, when you have an enemy, get rid of them. But once again, she felt guilt about the Sister Veronica thing. Eventually, she won't feel bad about the whole Savannah thing. Like, eventually, it's going to get to the point that she's like, right, sacrifices have to be made. If you stand in my way of what I'm trying to accomplish, you're the enemy. And hell, like, it might get to the point that Allie might not even have to do it. One of the other girls will. I mean, I think it was Gordy that got in Savannah's face, like, last episode, being like, yo, Allie can't trust people who aren't. I mean, I think that also is probably what led to it, is because like Savannah was already on the outs already, so that weakened the bond because she's the one that posted the videos initially with Allie's face. So I mean, which worked to her benefit, but it also put her in an unfortunate position of having her face out there, which led to the news being put out there about Allie. So, but either way, I love that Roxy was not believing the whole like. I didn't think she would. I thought she was going to go to Allie on her own. She went to Allie because she was desperate because she couldn't go to New York like she was planning because her dad already knew she was going to New York. So you already planned for that. So she ended up going to, I forgot where they are. I mean, we know that I don't know if she's still technically in Alabama or not. We know that's where her story started with the Montgomerys or whatever, but I don't know if she's still technically in Alabama. I don't remember when they specified like where she was in that situation. But either way, I did like that Roxy showed up, and Roxy's like flexing her powers and stuff. And interestingly enough, Allie could be nearby without even really doing it. They feed in the same water, is able to block Roxy's power. And she's like, oh, I don't believe that, like, God stuff. And then, like, she was getting frustrated because her powers were taken from her, but she was able to, like, release her powers regardless. And Allie's, like, surprised. It's like, wow, you are the strongest person I've ever met. Like, because no one's been able to kind of escape her when she bends her will like that. But it also shows you because Roxy's that powerful and she's that strong-willed. And, you know, it's just like the voice told her, like, hey, a soldier will come. That's also the thing of, like, is that just in Roxy? That's what makes you also second guess the voice, because the voice knows some stuff like that. I mean, it's the one teaching Allie all this, so it might not just be a voice. It might be associated with an actual person. I don't know. It might actually be. I don't think it's going to end up being a god thing. I think it legitimately might be someone who has a little bit of a god complex, who's playing the role of a god, but I don't think so. Who knows? But because that's the only. Well, because like other than like we've had we've had connections between some of our other like protagonists and stories overlapping, but this is like the first time like full on two of our like leads have gotten together, so that's actually pretty dope. And you know, Allie welcomes Roxy to the family, especially when Roxy doesn't have any family of her own. Like things are like her family's kind of dead to her. I mean, Daryl's still looking out for her. I doubt Ricky would be, but Daryl is. He's the one that warned her, like, yo, Dad's after you. If you're going to New York, like, you got to get out of here. Like, he still cares about her, because I think out of anyone, he was probably closest to Roxy. They are the same age, so they probably always like clicked a little more than her or him with Ricky and Terry. Maybe, I don't know. So, but Roxy kind of found a new home that will kind of accept her for who she is. She doesn't have to be anyone else but herself because she always, once again, had to try so hard just to get her dad's attention. So, we have that side of things. Then we catch up with Tatiana. So now that Victor's dead, I just wasn't sure how things were going to work in Carpathia, whether or not, because it's the way women are treated in that country. I'm like, I actually don't know if they would allow her to have the power, regardless of being the wife of the president. I don't know if they'd be like, we need to put a man in that position. Because it's just kind of like a situation of, it'd be like a prince or a princess situation. Even if the princess is older, I think typically the leadership would, especially maybe from queen to daughter would be one thing, especially if that's an only child. But I think in a situation where there's a king and a queen, the king will pass down the leadership to the son, even if the son's the youngest. So that's why I'm like, I feel like that's why I was kind of thinking they might try and take that away from her. But it's like, no, Tatiana does in fact have all the power. She got her sister's number and location from Tundi, got him released, tell him to go back to this hotel. He hears from Declan because Declan's like, yo, I'm about to go see Zoya and her people of the resistance. Basically, it's like, not only did he sell you out, he's now going to take your story that was your story and hijack it for his own. Irony is, it came back to blow him up in his face because it's like, cool, being a D-bag ended up screwing you over. It cost you your life. The moment they were like, oh, go ahead and cross the river, I was like, don't do that, you idiot. Don't do that. I don't think they were initially going to kill him. I think they were just doing what they were doing. They were zapping and they were messing with him. But then what did he do? He called them cows. And for them, it's like, oh, they probably had so many men. They've already dealt with men abusing them, treating them like they were nothing. And you were just talking this. For me, I'm like, are you stupid? You are in their territory. That's like walking in someone else's country and saying some foul shit. It's like, are you stupid? Especially because all these women have the power and you're standing in water. You're already getting zapped. The last thing you want to do is piss them off. But Declan's kind of a little, I think, egotistical. He let his position as a journalist get the best of him. He said, no, I'm a journalist. Don't you really reckon? Don't you know who I am? It's like, yeah. So, Zoya gave the go-ahead and they zapped the hell out of Declan and killed him. It's like, well, I guess that's the ironic thing. You took this story from Tundi. Tundi was going to be in the similar situation, but Zoya kind of liked him enough to let him live. So Zoya doesn't know you. You didn't present yourself in you weren't humble. You were kind of egotistical in that moment, and it cost you your life. So, but Tundi is trying to do everything he can get to warn Zoya. Because especially when you have Tatiana giving the order, she's like, yeah, I'm sacrificing my sister. I'm like, are you really? Because she was just on the phone before she talked to the general, but I wasn't sure or not. And that look on her face, I'm like, would she really be so willing to protect, really put because especially considering their upbringing, she felt like she already abandoned her sister once. There's no way she was going to do it again. And ultimately she didn't. The general and his men walked into a trap because Tatiana and her people were ready and massacred them. Tundi ended up coming upon the scene and he's trying to save the general's life. He puts him in the car, but I don't know if they're saving him at that point in time. Because the problem is, you can't let that general live because he knows that Tatiana set him and the others up. So I don't know if he died in the backseat, but Tundi did put him in the backseat. It's like, he was literally on fire when Tundi ran into him, and it's a lot because Tundi had taken a video because he's seen both the good and the bad of the powers. This is the worst it's ever gotten. This was a massacre. To be fair, it was also in self-defense because those people were there to massacre all of them. There was no because I think, at least in Tundi's mind, them killing people, maybe burning some villages, it's fine because of everything that those places and people did to him. And that's one thing. These are also people that were kind of doing a similar thing. They were out to kill you, and I'm sure Zoya and them weren't going to let them live. It's like, even if they were running away, because these are the same people that will come back to kill you. They had the intent to kill you to subvert this revolution of sorts. But for Tundi, it was like seeing, it's like being at war. Tundi already had PTSD from a few episodes back. Was it Riyadh? Everything that went down there gave him PTSD, and this was just a reminder of it. But it was even worse because, yeah, there was some casualties here and there. the place was riddled with dead bodies. The same river that Declan got killed in, so were every other soldier. Which you would think naturally from a tactical standpoint, avoid water like crazy. I mean, to be fair, you might not have had a choice. They might have pinned you down into water. I mean, I think I played enough video games where you can like utilize water and then like, you know, use something electrical to screw someone over. Like Infamous 1 and 2, I think you get to utilize that because Cole has electrical abilities, and I think you can use that to your advantage. I remember watching someone play the Infamous games a long time ago, so I might be misremembering, but obviously it's a common enough thing in games of, oh, you see water, use something electrical, you can kind of kill a lot of people at once. So I'm like, I got that in my brain where I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere near water, but once again, if they like ambush you and do a pincer maneuver to back you into a corner like that, you might not have any choice but to be in the water because they back you into that corner. So, but Tatiana's, you know, she has chosen a side and is her sister's side. So, what this means for the future of Carpathia, because it's like, right, Zoya's leading her revolution, Tatiana's running like all the military, and they kind of have no choice but to fall in line. You know, eventually someone's going to try and rise up and take her position because once again, it's not like she was voted. Well, I was about to say voted in. It's like, who knows how he was on some dictator shit like Victor was. So I don't know whether he was voted in or not. I mean, it's a place of corruption and, you know, sex trafficking. So who knows, like, if Victor didn't pay his way to the top. So, like, you know, Tatiana could do the same thing. Because the reason why I'm saying that is maybe someone, like an election could come up and Tatiana would probably have to run, but who knows how people would kind of, I mean, the women would have her back most likely, but none of the men. That's a whole other conversation. But I don't like, she would have eventually be challenged for her position as president. So that's why I was like, yeah, the future is going to be complicated in that regard. Not less, because we don't know what the terms are in that place of like, and it's a place of corruption, so you could probably make your term extended as long as you want to. Who knows the full extent and because Tatiana can do so much with her helping her sister on the other side of things, you know. So how that all plays out, who knows? Tundi is a mess after everything. Whether or not he's going to stay and still get the story done because this is still necessary. Like I said, it's a scary side of things that he already witnessed how scary it can be, but it's even more so now where it's just also a reminder of, yeah, because he's the one that's always preached about the good of what this power can be and what it can do, but he's also seeing like the deadly and scary side of things too. But that's also a byproduct of something good too, with these women who are sex trafficked and abused, being able to fight back and protect themselves and protect other women in the same boat. They can change things in this country. So that's the complicated gray area of it, because does the good outweigh the bad and death, you know? That's any revolution. There's always going to be death, you know? So there's always going to be blood spilled. So we have that. Finally, we have the side of things with Margot. Obviously the campaign is ramping up and it's kind of coming down to everything between her and Daniel. Obviously, Margot's got a lot on her mind because her and Rob, because of their conversation last episode. So now a lot of that's weighing on her mind, and she didn't tell anyone in her campaign about it. So now the conversation switches over to Ryan, that yes, there probably are other people in a similar circumstance from a biological standpoint as Ryan, but none of them are coming forward for obvious reasons. Ryan wasn't absolutely going to come forward. The only reason why he came forward is because Maddie put him in that position by releasing that video. So now it is a situation of, what do we do about the Ryan situation? The moment Helen suggested, don't worry, we'll talk to his parents, we're going to make sure he's protected, Helen is going to handle that her way because her job is looking after Margot in the campaign. I was like, she's going to make him disappear, because they wanted to kind of hide him away from the public eye, because it's like, hey, you're already pretty low when it comes to men on your side. And if you have Ryan, who is dating your daughter, like, it's going to make even more of those people turn against you. Like, things aren't going to be so favoritist when you are polling well with women. And now, because obviously I think there's going to be some women who also have an issue with Ryan having it. There's going to be men having an issue with Ryan having it. So And speaking of, at school, everyone is looking at him. It is kind of sad that like his situation was put on blast like that. And then you have Joss walking by and she sees Yuki like marking up his locker saying Sparky because she now has the power. And it's like, oh, now, like, oh yeah, like you and him, the fact of the matter is kind of calling him like, oh, you can't even control your power. You're just as much of a freak as your boyfriend. You're like, whoa. And in that moment, Josh pushed her against the locker. It's like, I can't believe I was ever friends with someone as low as you. Evolve, bitch. Like it is, and I think that speaks volumes because let's not forget Yuki and her were, yes, friends, but the moment she started hanging around Kat and the other people with powers, it made Yuki start feeling like, oh, I lost my friend. Like it, you know, because she started feeling alone. Now that she's having the power, she's starting to feel herself because now it's showing Yuki's true colors. Like this power has made people kind of reveal who they really are. And it showed her character of like, man, you are a shitty person. It was a shitty thing for you to turn on your friend. At the time, I not saying it was okay, but I can understand from her perspective why she'd do it. Once again, it's not okay that she outed her friend like that, threw her and Kat under the bus, but it's because she was feeling jealous. It was also a day where all the fear-mongering was happening. But now you have the power and you're feeling like hot shit. You're trying to put Joss down and Ryan. But it's like, yeah, like she told you to evolve because it's like, yeah, you were just as bad as the people you were trying to throw me under the bus to back then when they're on that fear-mongering, and now you're doing like this. You are discriminating against someone. It's like, yeah, once again, it's like that power showed her true colors in that moment. Because it was born of insecurities, and now she feels special, and like, yeah, she's hanging out with other people, because it seems like Yuki, like Joss might have been her only friend, but now she's hanging out with the other girls, and they're like, ha 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 ha, laughing about like Ryan's circumstances, like once again, calling her Fizz. I think it's a byproduct of her not being able to control her power, like kind of like fizzle, I guess. But yeah, Joss and Ryan walk away because at least it's like, man, screw that, screw anyone else that has a problem with it. I got your back, Ryan. I'm beside you, and he's just as much beside her, and I thought that was so beautiful. But the problem is, once again, you go back to Helen, who try to approach Ryan's family by being like, hey, let's send him to a camp where he can control everything. It's like you could just read the way Helen's smiling and everything. It's like, you're not doing this for Ryan's sake, you're doing this for Margot's campaign, and you know she didn't run this by Margot. Even without the scene later on, you're like, you know she's doing that behind Margot's back, because what did she say specifically to Margot? I'll make sure he's okay. She never said like, oh, I'm doing this and that, because Margot made it clear. She's like, I'm not going to ask my daughter to break up with her boyfriend or hide him, because this whole thing is supposed to be about transparency and everyone feeling comfortable being who they are. You know, so the same point she's making for women to feel safe and feel empowered, she wants Ryan to feel the same way too under these circumstances, especially because it's like, hey, this is the boy my daughter's in love with. I'm not going to like do that to him, especially in a situation where she's recently gotten the power and what that's meant to her, you know? Because the whole thing is she's against the discrimination that's being used against those with EOD, and that's Ryan's a primary example of that. But it's like, I just wish Helen hadn't done what she did, but she thought like, hey, I was doing the right thing for the campaign. It's like, in fact, because of the ending, we see that Helen actually screwed the pooch. It's actually Helen's fault that things played out the way they did. Also, Rob is on some fuck shit, because he's getting interviewed by someone and he's like, oh, here's my email. Actually, send it to my personal. I'm like, dude, I know you made the promise to her, like, hey, you're going to like get divorced after this is all said and done. Rob, keep it in your goddamn pants, bro. What are you doing? You and your wife aren't even divorced yet. You're not even separated. At the bare minimum, have the decency to wait till you're broken up completely before you're trying to like get into bed with someone else. I was like, that's super shitty. Like, he can't tell me it wasn't anything otherwise. Like, oh, no. Don't hit me up on this email. Hit me up on my personal. It's like, dude. Even to the point later on, she gives him his key card and stuff. It's like, you know you're wrong in that. That's super jacked up. Also, you're jeopardizing your wife's campaign when you're out here, like, people frown upon cheaters because that's not going to look good upon her. I mean, honestly, you could always spin it because that's politics for you, always spinning things. But despite an unfaithful person, but I mean, that can be a pro and a con. The con is it shows like, hey, her happy family isn't the thing she makes it out to be. Two, it's also a circumstance of oh, like she doesn't have the support of her husband, oh, like how can she be a strong leader and not dealing with, oh, someone that's unfaithful behind her back? But the other pro to that is people could see like, hey, she had a cheated husband and she's still moving on. She's doing what she's got to do despite going through what she's going through. But also like divorce. Because once again, it's like you have to present yourself as like the happy family. That's the whole shtick about politics. Like that's why someone's like, hey, you gotta present yourself as like a married person or in a relationship, because it's supposed to be kind of spun that way. Because it's kind of like supposed to represent kind of like American values if you're married, and probably like the more like nuclear families play a lot better politically speaking. It's all about perception and everything. So that's why I'm saying like it's just that political BS. But yeah, it's just like it was stupid on Rob's part. There's also Matt, who got directly like hooked up with Urban Docs. So fact is, we still don't know who he is. Once again, my big thing was like it's got to be Daniel, but I don't know. I wonder, is it going to end up being someone that is Maddie's age? Like we haven't seen anyone that I know definitively that it is, but maybe it's just a thing of Urban Docs. Maybe even the show. I mean, like. Maybe even those in the show don't know, because I don't know how big of a role Urban Doc stuff is in the book, because I don't know how much of a direct translation this show is in comparison to the book, because I've never read the novel, so I don't know. So I don't know if it's like a thing of like, is it always going to be a faceless figure? It doesn't feel like it. It feels like that's going to be a big reveal. And so it might be a thing of storyline wise, we have not actually met Urban Docs in any shape or form, like outside of like the artificial avatar they use online. But reached out to Maddie, trying to get Maddie to sabotage his mom's campaign. It's like, yo, just feed us some dirt. He's like, I'm appalled that anyone's taking my words and using them as an act of violence. He's like, I'm not doing that. Your mom, the thing she's enacting is basically going to erase our... He's putting it as like this is like a male erasure thing of like, men are going to be erased. Like, you got to like be ashamed of what you are as a male or whatever, Once again, that there's enough sense in Maddie that he's not fully bought in, but it is also a thing of, hey, he's starting to feel more and more invisible, and now he feels seen. Just like, there's a direct parallel with like the Yuki thing. Yuki's starting to feel like tough and talk shit and be an asshole because she's being seen for the first time now that she has the power. Now Maddie's kind of feeling like some of the power that he's felt like has been taken away from him. He's feeling it now. He's feeling seen, whereas he feels like he hasn't been seen by anyone in his family. Because we don't really know what him and Joss's... probably like any sibling thing, it was probably antagonistic to some extent, but obviously it's gotten worse since she used her power on him. Like, he won't forgive that, but he also still does love his mom because it's his mom. But he's also thinking like, because Irmadox was like, yo, if it was my mom doing what she's doing, trying to attack and destroy everything that we as men are, then like I would want you to do the same thing. I would do the same thing if it meant stopping my mom from doing the terrible things that she's doing with her laws and stuff. Which even Maddie comes from the perspective of he looked into it enough that he's like, hey, like women in politics deal with this much sexual harassment, this many death threats, and Joss is kind of like, yeah, duh, when did you become a feminist? He's like, no, but it's just like, he's trying to justify it to the rest of his siblings, like, and even justify it to himself, like, maybe me removing mom from the situation is actually the best all around. For one, life will go back to normal. Side note, life will never go back to normal. Your mom has the power, your sister has the power, your youngest sister Izzy will eventually get the power. So it's like, life will never be normal again because this Skane stuff, this EOD is not going away when over like half the population already has it too. So, but it's also the thing of, yes, he has his reasons for like, yes, it's a little selfish of like, hey, I want to get life back to normal. I want things to kind of be back to the way they were. I want to feel like a family again. So there's a selfishness and selflessness in it, but he also does legitimately not want his mom in a situation where it's like, because he tried to justify, be like, oh yeah, the guy set himself on fire, we're just trying to make an example. Once again, you're so radicalized in this moment, you're buying into it, but now that your mom is kind of getting even more mixed up in it, you were against her, but now you're feeling bad, because now you're realizing like, oh, mom got, like, he's looking into it a little bit more. So I think he's going to be a little more sympathetic. Maybe. Once again, he admitted, oh, I'm not a feminist. So it is a thing of, he's just using that data to try and convince his sisters to get their mom to back down. But now that he's read into it more, it probably makes him severely and sincerely go, oh, maybe it would be a good thing if mom wasn't a part of this, like all that she'd have to deal with, And so when it comes to the debate, there is the back and forth between Obviously, the conversation they keep using Clyde as the poster child, and Margot countered that by like, wait, we don't know all the facts, which Daniel then was like, oh, that should be the slogan, that we don't know all the facts, and he's trying to spit some stuff that is facts, but it's like, no, like statistics and stuff on Margot's side, because she was like, reported rapes are down, attacks against those who are trans are down, like crime is on the decline, despite him wanting to use these isolated incidents like as a representation of the whole. It's like he wants to paint the EOD as a criminal act, where she's like, it needs to be treated as a health situation. You also had Daniel throwing Rob under the bus, because it's like he doesn't have any hard evidence to prove it, but eventually it would rise, it'd pop up, but he has no hard evidence that says Rob is the one who leaked the document, but everything points to, hey, the person who published it is a friend of your husband. Your husband's also one of the people who would have access to that type of information. So it all points to him. So that was kind of like a yikes situation, but she was able to kind of deflect with that. There was a woman who came up on stage who doesn't want the EOD, and she's kind of scared because she comes from a violent home upbringing, and she's scared of that kind of being replicated with the EOD, with the violence and stuff like that. Daniel's, once again, treating it like a gun situation, but Margot came from the position of, like, I get it, I respect your decision to not want it, but let me ask you this. Do the women, do you think all women feel safe or whatever? And she was kind of like, no. And even asking the woman herself, like, do you ever feel safe outside of your own home, especially because of your circumstances of growing up in a violent situation? And it's like, no. And it's like, well, I respect your decision, but what about the women like who want the EOD to make themselves feel a little safer outside in the world? It's like, right, it should be a thing of, this shouldn't be forced on anybody, but it shouldn't be a situation where you are taking that choice. It should always be about choice. The EOD should never be forced on anyone, but people should have a choice whether or not they want it or not. And, and I thought that was beautifully handled. And once again, everything gets torpedoed because Helen did what she did. Because obviously Margot was blindsided by the Ryan thing, and she looks at Helen, and Helen kind of looks down because she knows she fucked up. And Daniel's grilling her about it, about like sending him away. Because they knew about Ryan, so they probably wanted to look into the Ryan situation themselves. And so they ended up probably tracking down his parents, and they probably told Daniel's people about it. So now it's a thing of, oh, we know about this. Like, let me tell you really what's going on. Like, spinning it as a truth that it is. Margot's people wanted to get Ryan out of the way because of how this would look. Because he also said like that camp or whatever that he's being sent to is medication being used against people with skeins and EOD. Because the moment, because it took me a second, like the moment Joss was trying to get in touch with Ryan, she couldn't. But then it took me a second, and I was like, oh, right, he already got sent to that camp, most likely the reason why they can't get in contact with him. And Daniel kept pushing, and he ended up talking about, like, basically what ended up happening between Joss and Maddie, and it pissed her off, and she used her power. So now the public knows not only that she has powers, and she also lied about it and covered that up, but also now she ended up attacking Daniel. So every point she had before is now mute at this point in time. So, like, and that's the sad thing, like, she has every right to get pissed. The bastard was getting under her skin. Like, everyone has a right to be pissed, but it's the thing of, like, you're also a politician. A lot of people will see it as, hey, you practically pulled out a gun in front of America and shot him live on camera. That's the same equivalency in a lot of people's eyes, especially when they are having a conversation of treating EOD like it is like a person carrying around a loaded gun all the time. So that went super bad. So where things kind of go from there, it's not going to be good for Margot. Now this does in question bring up the thing we saw in episode 1 of, the police are showing up. Who are they showing up for? I kept being like, oh, they gotta be showing up for Rob. With this, they're most likely showing up for Margot now. So it definitely seems like it's leaning that direction. So at the time of me recording this, The Power has not been renewed for a second season yet. Fingers crossed, hoping that it will. I don't know how well, like, I see some of the numbers on like IMDb, but that's not always a full representation of. It comes down to how many people are watching the show. That's all it is. It is a numbers game. So I don't know whether or not the show has a good enough reception and ratings wise. But I do hope we get a season 2. Obviously, there's still plenty more story to tell, especially because, once again, I brought this up at the beginning, I believe. I might have talked about it last week, too, but this season was originally supposed to be 10 episodes. This episode definitely didn't feel like a season finale, but probably because they probably dumped the last episode. Once again, I think I might have brought this point up, but basically it's the equivalency of what happened to Titan Season 1. That's why Titan Season 1's finale and the season premiere the way they are. It's because it was originally supposed to be 1 episode longer than what it was, at the bare minimum. So this definitely doesn't feel like a season finale. It's probably meant to be the penultimate episode, especially because all the stuff we saw at the beginning of episode 1, as I brought up, the Margot and those cops or people in SWAT uniforms showing up behind her, that was most likely going to be stuff in the next episode. So that's why this kind of feels like, yes, a season finale in some regards, but it's probably a thing of this was already all filmed, but before they probably got working on a 10th episode, they were like, nah, cut it off there, make it only 9 episodes, for whatever reason. I do know the showrunner left the show after this was, I think after it was done, like, so if there is going to be a season 2, I know it's going to be a different showrunner, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if that was contributing factors or whether there were other things at play here. But obviously, like, just from the feel of what we got, you know, even probably with the season finale, there'll still be way more story to tell. Once again, I've never read the book, so I don't know how much of the book has been adapted, whether we're at the halfway mark, we're at the 3rd mark. So I want this show to go on for as long as it needs to tell its story. I mean, to be fair, like, once again, with adaptations of a book like this, you could easily go beyond it. Like, an example I'd go to is, like, one of my favorite shows is The Magicians. Technically speaking, the book storyline technically ended with season 2's finale. Obviously, they changed a lot, so it was going in multiple different directions, and that show went on for 3 more seasons, like, following story that I don't think was in the books at all, kind of went its own direction, but because obviously it was quite different from the book. So once again, I don't know how this compares to the book, whether it's a very close adaptation or is it kind of taking bits and pieces but still doing its own thing. So it could kind of take like certain beats and storylines from the book and kind of complete that story while also continuing and doing its own thing. Or maybe, you know, it only runs 2-3 seasons, however long it needs to tell the story it needs to tell. So that's what I want for any story, to tell the story it wants to tell in its completion. So however many seasons it takes. Since this is, once again, based on a novel, it does have a finite ending already. But like I said, that's why I wonder how much of the story is left book-wise. You know, maybe that's a little harder to tell, once again, depending on how the adaptation goes, on whether or not it's a closer adaptation or not. So, once again, fingers crossed, hoping for a season 2, because I'd love to see where all of this would take us going forward into a 2nd season. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.